Screenshot Asia is a joint project from the University of Pittsburgh Film and Media Studies program and the Asian Studies Center that brings together students, faculty, and community members to create a shared awareness of Asian and Asian American experiences through contemporary film and media. Using film, video, and other on-screen arts, the series provides a forum to learn about Asian art, whether it's a classic work of cinema, a film by an emerging director, or a documentary addressing contemporary social concerns. The programming allows for a reflection on the importance of visual arts, current arts technology, and the place of cultural experiences in a global educational experience. If you want to learn more about Screenshot Asia, please check out their website at www.screenshot.pitt.edu. Hello everyone, and welcome back to a twin bill of the Pittsburgh-based Golden Silent Films podcast Action. We will be taking you to two very different Steel City neighborhoods to bring you discussions about two very different silent film experiences. This episode will be a true double feature as we start our adventures in Oakland, where we will be watching and talking about the 1927 Chinese silent film The Cave of the Silken Web. After a brief intermission, we're going to head downtown to take in the classic 1928 Lillian Gish film The Wind. There is no better cinematic experience than the tried-and-true, world-famous double feature. Whether you're enjoying nature at a classic drive-in or consuming your double dips in the air-conditioned theaters of the local multiplex, seeing two films has a certain magic about it. So, with the prospect of discussing two awesome movies in one episode, we have no time to waste. Now, our first film and topic of discussion takes us to the Oakland campus of the University of Pittsburgh on April 7th, 2025. More specifically, we will be watching The Cave of the Silken Web, a Chinese silent film released in 1927. This great screening was put on by Screenshot Asia as part of their Silent Asia series. If you are unaware or missed the ad read at the beginning, Screenshot Asia is a joint project from the Film and Media Studies program and the Asian Studies Center at the University of Pittsburgh, and it brings together students, faculty, and community members to create a shared awareness of Asian and Asian American experiences through contemporary film and media, and of super interest to us, the occasional silent film. We love this so much as it opens our eyes to a ton of films and filmmakers that we would normally be dreadfully unaware of. Every event we attend is an eye-opening experience that really showcases some amazing works of art. Using film, video, and other on-screen arts, the series provides a forum to learn about Asian art, whether it's a classic work of cinema, or a film by emerging filmmakers, or a documentary discussing social concerns. We really are in a global environment these days, and seeing films like these screened by Screenshot Asia really kind of puts that in perspective. Now, this film was not our first experience with a Screenshot Asia event, and if you're a longtime listener of the show, it will not be yours either, because those longtime listeners out there, we love you, all of you. You will remember our episode featuring the Korean silent crossroads of youth and its use of the art of Byeonsa in its storytelling. Screenshot Asia really does bring new experiences to audiences and really does a great job of sharing Asian culture through film. They're such a fantastic group that always has super cool screenings and other artistic endeavors going on somewhere around Pittsburgh. If you want to learn more or see their schedule of events, head on over to www.screenshot.pitt.edu. Now, this was one I was especially excited for a number of reasons. First, the title alone, The Cave of the Silken Web, piqued my genre-loving interest. Second, the whole event was happening on my birthday. There really is no better way to celebrate a birthday than in a packed theater watching a silent film that is completely new to me. Now, before we talk about the film proper, let's talk to Kristen Strayer, Screenshot Asia Program Coordinator, about how this film was selected to be shown at this awesome screening. Kirsten explains, I first learned about Cave of the Silken Web through Christopher Wray's website, Chinese Film Classics. Dr. Wray at the University of British Columbia is a significant scholar in Chinese silent cinema. He literally wrote the book on early Chinese film, but he has also created a fabulous website with links to films, histories, and other resources. Strayer continues, so one of the things that I'm sure you know is that one of the challenges about screening silent films is that the vast majority of them no longer exist. Our Silent Asia programming screens one silent film per year, and one of the challenges is making sure that we have a complete, or mostly complete, visible print of the film. One of the coolest things about these events is the films they choose to cover and how it impacts the cinematic history of Asia. As I mentioned earlier, the last screening we attended was a Korean film from 1934. Kirsten Strayer adds, "We like to show films from all over Asia. Some Asian countries, of course, didn't have a silent film industry, so we have been limited primarily to Japan, Korea, China, and India, as well as to a lesser extent the Philippines and some Central Asian countries. And we also like to rotate countries and not feature the same country twice in a row. We have shown a Chinese film before, The Goddess, but that was way back in 2019. In selecting The Cave of the Silken Web, Strayer explains, "We were looking to do a Chinese film again, and one of the things that excited us about Cave was that it was rather different from many of the Chinese silent films still available. A lot of them are dramas and melodramas, so what stood out to us was Cave's genre elements, a bit mythic fairy tale, a bit horror, a bit comedy, and its delightful special effects. Even though we were missing part of the film, it was also a great length for Pitt's music PhD composition students to compose to. So, all of those descriptions of the film only made me want to watch it even more, and it made me want to discuss it with you fine folks even more than that." Now, with this being a double feature, that means we will be discussing two films, which in turn means neither film plot breakdown is going to be super in-depth. But we are going to make it work, and hopefully you'll still be sufficiently infotained. Now, this film, The Cave of the Silken Web, is based on a chapter in Journey to the West by Wu Cheng'en, written during the Ming Dynasty. It is regarded as one of the greatest pieces of Chinese literature and has been described as one of the most popular and well-known literary works in all of East Asia. It is widely known to English-speaking countries through British scholar Arthur Waley's 1942 abridged translation. This special effects intensive silent film by the husband and wife team of director Dan Du-Yu and actress Pearl Ng premiered in Shanghai during the 1927 Lunar New Year holiday and was exhibited overseas, we read on the Chinese Film Classics website. For some more info on Dan Du-Yu, we turn to the website www.filmfrasor.no, a Norwegian film history site, where we read, "Dan Du-Yu was a successful portrait painter who was fascinated by the film, and in 1920 started Yingxi Shanghai, Chinese second film company. The first film they did was Hai Shai, 1922, China's second feature film. The film's success laid the foundation for the company's growth and Du-Yu's own career as China's foremost director with over 40 films to his name. The story of Journey to the West is super ubiquitous in China. From books to super famous television shows to movies and even video games, the story has been told over and over and over again in many different ways. This silent treatment was one of the first to take the tale and make it into a cinematic event. This film is based on 2 chapters of Journey with some creative license thrown in for good measure. What an awesome and entertaining experience it turned out to be. Much like the book, the film was a big hit in China and, oddly enough, in Norway. The Film Frasor website writes, "Cave of the Silken Web was a huge boost for the young film industry in Shanghai, and major resources were used for dramatic scenery and period costumes. It set a new standard in both the delivery time and special effects. The result was so spectacular that it was the first Chinese film to be screened in Norway." Now, as a bit of scene setting, the story takes place during the Tang Dynasty and follows the pious Buddhist monk Xuanzang, or Tripitaka, as he is known in English versions, who went on a 16-year journey to India in the 7th century AD to seek out and collect Buddhist scriptures. In this iteration, the monk was played by Zhang Melkang. In The Cave of the Silken Web, we get to see a segment of the story on the big screen. The group arrives at a cave inhabited by some incredibly beautiful women, who, spoiler alert, are actually spider spirits in disguise. The leader of the Spider Gals is played by the aforementioned Pearl Ng. She was known professionally as Yinming Shu. She was born in Wuchang, Jiangsu Province in 1904. On February 1st, 1926, Yinming Shu and Dan were married in Hangshu, making them China's first filmmaking couple. Of the scores of films directed by Dan Du-Yu, Yinming Shu played a lead role in nearly half of them. Now, a second ago, I mentioned that traveling group. That would include Xuanzang and his 3 companions, the Monkey King, the Pig Spirit, and the Turtle Spirit, being sent by Emperor Taisung on a journey west to find ancient Buddhist scriptures and writings. Eventually, after some serious travel on foot, Xuanzang becomes very hungry. He takes leave of his companions and enters a suspicious cave to ask for food. There he encounters 7 beautiful women who invite him in to rest and eat. Unbeknownst to him, the monk has arrived in a spiderweb cave inhabited by women whose true form are massive spiders. The 7 women appeared to possess supernatural powers. As a quarter way through the film, one of the women appears to teleport through a stone wall. The monk, while appearing to reject their romantic advances, humbly requests a vegetarian meal. Away from the monk in the kitchen inside the cave, the spider woman and their servant discuss eating the monk. Away from the cave, the Monkey King claims he can smell spirits and that the venerable father has fallen into the hands of evil spirits that are trying to seduce him. The 3 companions of the monk set out to rescue Zhongchang. The spider women try various tricks and traps to get the monk to eat meat, but he steadfastly refuses. The monk eventually grows weary and suspicious and tries to leave. Much to his chagrin, the spider women don't let him. One spider woman offers the monk to stay permanently with them, where he will be clothed and fed, and discourage his spiritual mission to find crummy old sutras. 6 of the spider women go to take a bath, while one spins a large web to trap the monk. Eventually, they scheme for one of their 7 spider women to marry the visiting monk. Eventually, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King and the pig spirit, or Pigsy as he's called, arrive at the cave and accuse the spider women of holding the monk against his will in their cave. Pigsy, played by Zhu Hongshang, even threatens the spider women with his weapon if they do not release his compatriot. They deny they have him and invite the accusers to search their house for the missing monk. One of the spider women offers permanent hospitality to the pig spirit, but he refuses as he does not trust him. As well he shouldn't. They eventually coax the pig spirit, though, into climbing into their spiderweb, and he is tied up like a prisoner. The Monkey King enters the cave and uses his powers to transform into a likeness of one of the 7 beautiful spider women. He is thus able to sneak past their guards and untie the feisty Pigsy. Pigsy then attempts to seduce the beautiful woman, unaware until he transforms back into his shape that is that Monkey King in disguise. Pigsy and Sun Wukong, played here by Wu Wenchao, then engage in combat with 2 of the spider women, as well as their aforementioned slave/butler/servant. The women and their slave escape by weaving a web that the two of the companions cannot pass through. The monk eventually witnesses his soon-to-be wife transform into a huge spider on the day of their wedding. His opinion of her is, understandably, shifted by this revelation of her true form. Soon after, it seems the Monkey King that tried to free the monk in earlier parts of the movie returns again to try and free the monk again. The spider women try to hide the monk to prevent him from being taken away from them by the Monkey King. The Monkey King then succeeds, though, in reducing their cave to rubble and dust via fire. The cave, along with the lustful passions of the spider women, are burned to a crisp as the spider women all transform back into their true, hideous, massive spider form. The monk escapes with his 3 companions, and with that, the adventurers return to the road, and the film comes to an end. Speaking of roads, the road this film took to being screened here in Pittsburgh in 2025 was about as wild and fraught with peril as a trip through the aforementioned cave of the Silken Web. For a while, the film was thought to have been completely lost. Like many a silent film before and after it, the Cave of the Silken Web was lost to the sands of time for an incredibly long time. And what do you do when you've lost a piece of silent Chinese cinematic history? Well, the answer is incredibly obvious when you really think about it. You take your search to Scandinavia, of course, and Norway to be more specific. According to Nancy Nguyen from the Center for Asian American Media, we read, "An old silent film from the golden age of Chinese cinema made the headlines last April when a nitrocellulose print of the Cave of the Silken Web was finally returned to China from Norway. The film, long thought to be lost to the times, was discovered in Norway's National Library in 2011. The discovery of this rare film is a cause for celebration for many, as few Chinese films produced between the 1920s to the 1930s have survived the Cultural Revolution, leaving a dearth of films from what was considered the golden age of Chinese film. With the survival of this film, you really see what a special production it was. To have disappeared forever would have been such a terrible loss, both culturally and just from an entertainment standpoint. These filmmakers really created something special that proved to be quite successful, and like the filmmaking of today, all roads led to a sequel. The extant portion of the film we read on the Chinese Film Classics website showcases the bold set design, performance, tinting, special effects, and other stylistic choices that silent filmmakers made in retelling Journey to the West, a work that has proven to be a perennial favorite of filmmakers and moviegoers alike. The 1927 film was successful enough upon its original release to inspire Dan and Pearl to make an encore. Cave of the Silken Web 2 in 1930, which was released around the time the nationalist government censorship authorities began cracking down on films that contained sexy, supernatural, or politically incorrect content. This 1930 film is thought to be lost. Now, you win some and you lose some, I suppose. While it is a bummer we lost the sequel, I am so incredibly happy that this great original film still exists today. Whether it has Chinese subtitles, Norwegian subtitles, or both, as this film actually does. It's so cool to see long-lost films like this on a big screen in a packed house, and with talented musicians bringing it all back to life for a whole new audience. One of the things that was so exciting about this screening was where it was being held. The event, as I may or may not have mentioned earlier, was held at the Frick Fine Arts Building on the campus of the University of Pittsburgh. Over the last couple years, this place has really risen up the ranks and is becoming one of my favorite Pittsburgh locales to catch a movie. It is so cool and definitely worth a visit. In case you didn't know much about this cool venue, let's talk about it. The Frick Fine Arts Building is home to the Department of History and Art and Architecture and also the Department of Studio Arts. The building opened in 1965 and was a gift of Helen Clay Frick in memory of her father, Pittsburgh industrialist and art patron Henry Clay Frick. According to the Pitt website, modeled after a Roman villa owned by Pope Julius III, living 1847 to 1555, Frick Fine Arts houses classrooms, art galleries, an open cloister, and one of the nation's top fine arts libraries. The building's treasures include reproductions of 15th century Florentine Renaissance artworks by Russian artist Nicholas Lokoff. In 1911, Lokoff was commissioned by the Moscow Museum of Fine Arts to travel to Italy and make a series of copies of the finest examples of Renaissance art. These examples and copies are considered to be the finest replicas of the original works and were acquired by Pitt and placed in the Frick Fine Arts Building. That is some pretty impressive company to be in when you are just popping into a theater to watch a movie. But all jokes aside, this place is so incredibly amazing. Every time I have been there, I am captivated by the insanely amazing works of art all over the walls. And every time I go, there's always something new. There's a new detail. There's a new aspect of each painting that really just captures my imagination. And no matter how many times I have been there, it blows my mind every single time. One other little fun fact that pertains to this building is the Frick Fine Arts Fountain. The fountain outside the building was designed by Victor Brenner, the same artist who sculpted the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the U.S. penny, the soon-to-be extinct U.S. penny. We will be sure to share some photos on our socials when this episode drops. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff to see, so catch us on Instagram, Twitter, Bluesky, and we're going to have some really fun stuff. Now, this is the second screening I've been to in the Frick Fine Arts Building, and it really reinforces my belief that a great venue really adds so much to the overall movie-going experience, at least from a viewer's standpoint. And in a bit of a shameless self-promotion, keep an eye and ear on our YouTube channel for an upcoming short content episode looking at our first trip to the Frick Fine Arts Building. Kirsten Strayer adds, "We screen a lot in the Frick Fine Arts Building and do love the theater's old-timey style. I mean, some of the challenges are in the equipment. I would love to eventually see an upgrade to the sound system, but I think it does fit the silent era screening sensibilities." And I could not agree with her more. It definitely puts you in the mindset of being in the audience of a movie in the heart of the silent film era. Now, having gushed about how much I love this screening location seems like the perfect time to focus on the movie we just saw. This movie was so much fun. As a fan of horror and action films, I was so happy to get to catch this film live. While there is nothing wrong with melodrama and love stories and boy meets girl in silent film, sometimes I just need monsters, fight scenes, and special effects in my cinematic diet. The Cave of the Silken Web brought all of those things and more. It was such a fun and unexpected journey, and when things start to get weird on screen, you never knew what to expect next. I also really appreciated the humor of the movie. The quasi-sidekicks of the monk provided a lot of great moments, especially Pigsy. We also can't look past the direction of the aforementioned Dan Duyu. He takes what could be a mess of ideas and narrative details and really puts it all together into something incredibly charming and easy to follow, despite the different languages in the subtitles, but that's a whole nother story. I think it's really fun, which is one of the best parts, Kirsten Strayer told me. The special effects were absolutely great and innovative, although not necessarily unusual for Chinese films of that era. The women transforming into spiders is one of my favorite bits of the film. Strayer adds, and this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with our performance, but I love that both the Chinese and Norwegian intertitles are in there and that they were translated. I think film professionals were definitely aware that jokes were often not really cross-cultural, and so the Norwegian subtitles added its own flavor. I love seeing that process is written on the screen for us to see. And I, again, could not agree more. So that brings us to the conclusion of movie number 1, and we are walking out of the Frick Fine Arts building. So let's take this chance to go to the lobby and get ourselves some treats and information about the Golden Silent Films podcast and its social media outlets. As usual, head on over to Golden Silence Cast on Instagram for up-to-date info on this little podcast. Also, you can find us on Bluesky at Golden Silence Cast, and for all of you folks on X or Twitter, just follow at Golden Silence 1 or just search Golden Silence Cast, and we should crawl into your feed. All those screen names and sites will be in the episode description in case you are interested in checking us out. We would love to have you along on this adventure with us. At all of these social spaces, you'll get behind-the-scenes pics and info, upcoming episode reviews, and other fun film-related facts, and cool photos of our double feature of Podcats, Gizmo, and Soda Pop. Also, if you are listening to this program on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Music, do us a favor and leave a review, a rating, or if you're feeling especially generous, maybe both. All of those ratings and reviews help so much. Live your best review-leaving life and help our show grow a bit and reach silent film fans out there everywhere. Dropping those reviews gives us more exposure in the world of podcasts and lets us know how we can improve. As always, we are grateful for all of the feedback and always want to bring you the best show humanly possible. And also do subscribe to the Golden Silent Films podcast. While our output can be a little bit spotty, if you are subscribed, you will never miss an episode, and the moment new content drops, it's going to go straight to your listening device of choice. We are elbow deep in our 5th season and never want you to miss a single second of the action. Now that we've covered the audio side of things, let's take a quick moment to remind all of you out there of our presence on the video streaming platform YouTube. We have started putting our episodes on there for your streaming pleasure. Whether you are catching new episodes or you want to relive past movie discussions, just search for Golden Silent Films Podcast and we will pop right up. And we have just begun the world of exclusive short-form content that we are releasing on the YouTube channel. So definitely check it out, definitely subscribe. Since we are new to YouTube, please do us a solid and click on over there and like and subscribe. We are only at 39 subscribers. We hear it's what all the cool YouTubers ask for, and if I remember correctly, I'm supposed to say hit that notification bell. It's all about the engagement and the algorithms with this show, and we are old and often technically inept. So give us a little positive reinforcement and give our fledgling channel a once-over. And a huge thank you to all of you so much for supporting us on all of these various platforms. I would say that feels like enough advertising for this intermission, and we should probably get back to our second feature and get that up and running. So, with that in mind, let's tickle the ivories a little as the Victor Shellstrom/Seastrom classic, The Wind, blows our movie-loving minds. Now, we're leaving the world of academia and the arts and heading to the bright lights of downtown Pittsburgh for a screening that was raising money for an incredibly worthwhile cause. This awesome event benefited the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society, which, if you are unaware, is a great organization here in the Steel City doing so much to shine a spotlight on the silent films we all love so much. As I said, we are moving from the University of Pittsburgh and heading downtown to the historic Harris Theater, where we will be catching The Wind, featuring live accompaniment from the incredibly talented Tyler Stoner. We've mentioned the Harris Theater in an earlier episode, but here's a quick refresher. This theater came into existence as the Avenue Cinema, where it opened on September 14, 1931. It specialized in showing more artsy and interesting pictures, especially those from outside the States. It was renamed Art Cinema 4 years later in 1935. In the 60s, it fell on hard times and started showing less savory fare. All was not lost, however, for this historic building. On November 9, 1995, the Harris Theater was officially reopened to the public. The Harris Theater represented the cornerstone of the redevelopment of Liberty Avenue. Naming it the Harris was no coincidence either, as it was named after John P. Harris, co-founder of Nickelodeon, the first theater solely dedicated to the showing of motion pictures. He also served as Pennsylvania State Senator. It's a cool, full-circle kind of thing seeing a silent film in a nearly 100-year-old building that is named after a piece of Pittsburgh silent film history. As mentioned earlier, this film was being shown for a good cause. It was a fundraising venture for the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society, with the ticket price going towards the group putting on a lot of cool silent film events in the future. Having awesome festivals and screenings do not come cheap, and it is through cool stuff like this that helps keep those events afloat. As a proud Pittsburgher, I will never pass up the opportunity to shout out the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society and all their great work, especially as we get closer and closer to the yearly Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival. If you want more info, just head on over to pittsburghsilentfilmsociety.org. One of the things that made this screening so special was getting to see and hear Tyler Stoner perform the live accompaniment on piano. This was our second time attending a movie with Tyler Stoner on soundtrack duty. The first came a couple of years ago when he played alongside the Russian silent The Woman of Tomorrow. Since then, he has played at the 2024 Pittsburgh Silent Film Fest and is scheduled to play during the 2025 edition as well. He is so talented and does incredible work with silence. In an effort to introduce this great musician better, let's take a look at his musical background. As I mentioned, I was at his first film accompaniment, and it was great seeing how much he has grown in the intervening year. He was already a killer musician before, but when it comes to the movie play along world, his talents are only getting more and more fine-tuned and refined. I was lucky enough to catch up with Tyler after the screening of the Victor Sjostrom classic, and we chatted a bit about his growth from that first time playing alongside The Woman of Tomorrow. It's not always about the notes being played, Tyler would tell me, but about when to play those magical notes. Stoner explains, "One area I've grown and which I'm still working on is knowing when to switch up the mood. Sometimes I'm very eager to change the music to match every detail of the film, like a character's facial expression or hand movement. Since I'm improvising, that can be tricky. If I'm not careful, I can find myself in the wrong feeling or change keys too much, and it can fall flat. In The Woman of Tomorrow, I was moving around multiple motifs for every scene and character, whereas in The Wind, I had relatively few motifs that I cycled through more. I think it was a little more cohesive in that sense and allowed for the audience to make more connections. So I think I've gotten better in that regard." So with the stage set both geographically and musically, let's take a look at the film in a little bit more detail. First off, The Wind was directed by Victor Sjostrom, or, if you prefer the more Americanized version, Victor Seastrom, from a screenplay by Francis Marion, based on a novel by Dorothy Scarborough. The film featured cinematography by John Arnold and Conrad A. Nervig on editing duty. The film tells the story of Letty Mason, a woman from Virginia seeking a new life in West Texas. Letty is played by the legendary Lillian Gish. While on a train headed to her cousin Beverly's isolated ranch, she is bothered by the constantly blowing wind. Fellow passenger and cattle buyer Wirt Roddy makes her acquaintance and tells her the wind usually drives women crazy. Upon arrival, she is picked up by Beverly's closest neighbors, Liege Hightower and the older, comic relief providing Sourdough, who both live 15 miles from her cousin. Wirt assures her he will drop by occasionally to see how she's doing. After a seemingly endless journey through sand and wind, they arrive at the ranch. Beverly is delighted to see his cousin, but she receives an unexpectedly cold welcome from his wife Cora, played here by Dorothy Cumming. Soon, tensions in the family rise, and Cora is further angered when her children seem to like Letty better. If the name Dorothy Cumming sounds familiar, it should. She was the evil queen in the 1916 version of Snow White that we discussed several episodes ago. And it's interesting that she also plays a evil queenish type here who expels a younger, more attractive family member. Whilst the film takes place in Texas, you might be surprised to learn that this is an incredibly international film. In an article on silentfilm.org, we read, "Often labeled a Western because of its setting, The Wind also bears the marks of Hollywood's extraordinary international diversity. In addition to a Swedish director, the principal cast hailed from 6 countries spread across 3 continents, including the American Gish, the Swedish Sostrom and Lars Hansen, Australian Dorothy Cumming, Canadian Edward Earle, Danish William Orlemon, and the British Montague Love. Drama comes from outside the house as well when Letty attracts unwanted attention from a gaggle of suitors, including the aforementioned Liege Hightower, who was played here by the aforementioned Swede Lars Hansen. At a party, Sourdough tells Liege that he intends to propose to Letty. Liege explains that he was planning to do the same. Wirt makes his return to the story and drops by this very party. Everything is cool until a cyclone interrupts the festivities. Most of the guests seek shelter in the basement, where Wirt declares his love for Letty and offers to take her away from this dismal place. After the cyclone passes, Liege and Sourdough talk to Letty in private. When they flip a coin to see who asks for her hand in marriage, which Liege wins, Letty takes it as merely a joke. Later, Cora demands that Letty leave the ranch. Because she has neither money nor a place to go, she decides to go away with Wirt. But then Wirt reveals that he wants her for a mistress, informing her that he already has a wife. Now, if you hadn't noticed, Wirt is a pretty big jerk. So she goes back to Cora, who tells her to choose from her 2 other suitors. Of the 2, she marries Liege. Now, this marriage of necessity and convenience has predictably heartbreaking results. After the marriage, Liege tries to kiss her, but she can't go through with it. Her refusal only upsets Liege, which in turn causes him to hit the bottle. Now, drunk, he makes his intentions a little more forceful, and she tells him she hates him. He promises he will never touch her again and will try to make enough money to send her back to Virginia. In the meantime, Letty works around the house but continues to be bothered by the ever-present wind. There are so many great characters and moments in this film. I can only imagine how hard it would be to find musical inspiration in this film. So, obviously, while I had Tyler Stoner nearby, I had to ask about inspiration and where he found it in the film. Whether it was characters, the setting, or even the titular wind, I was super curious as to where he found his musical inspirations. Lillian Gish and her facial expressions certainly were a major inspiration, Tyler told me. It moved my musical choices into a more eerie domain compared to what I might normally consider. It also allowed me to foreshadow some of the trauma she'd endure. Every time there was a shot of her looking out the window wide-eyed and the wind would blow, I knew I could play a few creepy chords or a scale that would signal to the audience there was danger. It allowed me to focus on building everything towards the climactic scene at the end. Those moments certainly wouldn't have stuck out as much if it weren't for Lillian's acting. So, we turn back to the film proper, and at this point Liege is invited to a meeting of the cattlemen, who must do something to avoid starvation. Letty, terrified of being left alone with the wind, begs to go with him, and he agrees. She cannot control her horse at one point, and in the fierce wind, he has her get on behind him on his horse. When she falls off, Liege tells Sourdough to take her home. When the cattlemen return, they bring an unwanted guest, an injured Wirt Roddy. After he recovers, Liege insists he participate in a roundup of wild horses to raise money for the cattlemen. Wirt goes along, but later sneaks away and returns to Letty. Out of her mind with fear as she endures the house shaking from the worst windstorm yet, Letty faints soon after Wirt's arrival. He picks her up and carries her to the bed. While her character succumbed to the fury of the wind, the whole filming experience was no walk in the park for the real-life Lillian Gish. According to Turner Classic Movies website, we read, Gish also had less than fond memories of the wind. The Mojave Desert shoot was a nightmare in which 120-degree temperatures melted the film emulsion. This problem was ingeniously solved by freezing the footage, which was then defrosted and developed back in Culver City. But Gish was victimized by more than mere heat. Working on the wind was one of my worst experiences in filmmaking, she once wrote. Sand was blown at me by 8 airplane propellers, and sulfur pots were used to give the effect of a sandstorm. I was burned and in danger of having my eyes put out. My hair was burned by the hot sun and nearly ruined by the sulfur smoke and sand. She would, though, however, persevere and have an insanely long career in pictures. Now, the next morning, Wirt Roddy tries to persuade Letty to go away with him, but she coldly rejects him. He insists, noting Liege will kill them both if they remain. As Wirt becomes more aggressive, Letty picks up Wirt's revolver from the table to defend herself. Confident that Letty will not fire, Wirt grabs the gun and it goes off, killing him. At first startled by Wirt's death, Letty looks confused at him and at the gun in her hand. She then decides to bury the body outside. After she has done her grisly deed, she goes back inside the cabin. The wind blows to an even greater fury, and Letty stares with mounting fear through a window as the wind gradually uncovers Wirt's body. Letty then runs away from the window, but then sees two hands clasped around the cabin door trying to force it open. Letty hysterically believes it is Wirt returned from the dead and falls prone in terror, her face hidden as someone enters. Her hands turn over and Letty stares upward, blank with madness. However, it is not a return from the dead Wirt Roddy, but it is actually Lige who has returned from his cattle ride. One of the highlights of this movie is the performance of Lillian Gish. In a review, one of our favorite movie websites, Movies Silently, breaks down Gish's artistry perfectly, where they write, "The first and most obvious advantage that the film has is the presence of Lillian Gish. One of the greatest screen actresses of her era, she excelled at portraying innocence thrust into a harsh world. The Wind gave her a chance to put a more sophisticated spin on the character. Letty is innocent and basically good, but she has her share of flaws. At the beginning of the film, she is taken in easily by the superficial. She's a pragmatic character, even egocentric, who goes on her way through life with little regard for the feelings of others, particularly Lige and Cora. These flaws balance the character and make her a much more interesting than the usual virginal heroine. It makes her eventual journey to the brink of madness much more tragic and engrossing. This is a real person being driven insane." Back in the film, after a few moments, Letty returns to sanity and recognizes Lige. She is so glad to see him, she frantically kisses her husband. She then confesses she killed and buried Wirt. When Lige looks outside, however, the corpse is nowhere to be seen. He tells Letty that the Wind can remove traces when a killing is justified. He has enough money to send her away now, but Letty declares that she now loves him and that she no longer wants to leave, and that she is no longer afraid of the Wind or anything else. Before we move on to the reviews and talk about specific bits of the film, let's turn back to Tyler Stoner and see if he had a favorite scene in the movie to play music for. "The scene with the tornado was my favorite for sure," Stoner told me. "On screen, it's very interesting to look at because I'm not sure exactly how they would have made that effect in 1928. Musically, it was fun because of everything leading up to it. At the dance party, I was able to improvise a ragtime-like accompaniment and then hard switch to some Sturmundrang once the tornado hits. That's fun for me because of the contrast, something I couldn't pull off without the visual." This would prove to be the last American film for Victor Sjostrom/Seastrom. And looking back at the film, Movies Silently writes, "In The Wind, Seastrom stretches the potential of silent film to its limit and beyond. His agile camera and imaginative eye make this a timeless film. While not as dramatic as German directors of the period, his use of light and shadow adds just the right touch of stylization required for this nightmare version of Texas." Podcast favorite reviewer Morden Hall, whom we haven't really heard a lot lately, was not a particularly big fan of this film. In fact, I guess you could say he thought it blue. In the November 5th, 1928 issue of the New York Times, Hall writes, "Yesterday afternoon's rain was far more interesting than the Capitol Theater's current screen offering, The Wind, an adaptation of a story by Dorothy Scarborough. The rain was real, and in spite of the lowering skies, there was a life and color around you. In the picture, the wind, whether it's a breeze or a cyclone, invariably seems a sham, and Lillian Gish, the stellar light in this new film, frequently poses where the wind is strongest. During one of the early episodes, she does her bit to accentuate the artificiality of this tale by wearing the worst kind of hat for a wind. Victor Seastrom hammers home this point until one longs for a suggestion of subtlety." And that, folks, is why we love Morden Hall so much here at the home office. He does great reviews and the occasional weather report. In all honesty, it was so cool to see this amazing film with a packed crowd at the Harris. Even better was seeing it with the accompaniment from the talented Tyler Stoner. Now, I'm a bit of a historical nerd who is in awe of old buildings or new buildings with incredibly old things in them. And now I was curious if Tyler, as a musician, was as caught up with the location and venues as I often am. In fact, the last time I saw him in action was in the aforementioned Frick Fine Arts building. So I was really curious about what playing is like in these historically significant venues. They were certainly very nice venues to play, but I wasn't focused so much on their historical significance, Stoner told me. Anytime I've played somewhere, whether for a recital, a concert, or a silent film, I'm thinking about my performance and how the space affects what I need to do, like setting up or projecting. That being said, the Harris was a very cool theater to play in. It had a more intimate vibe, and the balcony seats weren't something I expected from a smaller theater. So, with our cinematic jaunt across Pittsburgh coming to a close, we wanted to thank you folks out there for spending this double time with us. It was a lot of fun attending these screenings, and we really hope that sense of fun and adventure translated to the podcast world. Did you enjoy this international double feature? How do you feel about us doing double feature episodes in the future? What are your dream double features? Tell us all of your picks. Let us know all that and more at the various social media spots of the Golden Silent Films podcast. And on that note, if you have forgotten, we're on Instagram, Bluesky, and Twitter. Let us know what you thought of this episode. What silent and silent-related movies, past or present, do you want us to look at next? Our world of silent movie knowledge and experience is always expanding, and that is why we need your input for future episodes here and beyond. You can always find us at Golden Silence Cast on Instagram and Bluesky at Golden Silence 1 on Twitter and now YouTube. And again, if you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or any other podcast that allows it, subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. It does a lot for our visibility, and we love hearing your thoughts and ideas. We really, really appreciate all of your incredible support, and seeing how much you folks are listening only makes us want to make bigger, better, and more epic episodes. Maybe even a triple feature in the future. So, with all that being said, thank you to all of you fine listeners out there for all of your fine listening. And do not forget, the silents are golden, and the talkies, they're just a fad.